Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Unless I misread the content schedule, which was beautifully rendered by Andrew Claudio, this is coming out on game day, which means it's game day. Did you like that, Jeremy? Hello, Jeremy Cohen.
Hey, John. It's Cavs preview week, baby. Anything goes.
We've reached the end of Cavs preview week, and I forgot what this was like, where you had, and really it's been more than a week because this matchup was set in stone, 3 games before the end of the regular season. So it's like, I just want to see a game being played now between the two teams that we've spent a whole lot of time thinking and talking about. That said, I have not had time to talk about this series with you. So I am just going to start with a extraordinarily open-ended question, which is what are your thoughts? How are you feeling? Take it wherever you want to go.
Well, the awesome thing about going last is that I get to hear everyone's thoughts and opinions. And the crappy part about it is everyone gets to take my thoughts and feelings I already had. John, I don't know if you know this, but the Cavs, not a great defensive rebounding team. I'm sure it's a brand new stat for you and a lot of the people listening. But with that being said, it's just that's one way the Knicks can really attack it. So, generally speaking, I'm in a good place. I think that this is a very evenly matched in terms of the 4-5s. I love the fact that the Knicks get to take on the Cavs. I think it's going to be fun no matter what. Where I kind of differ maybe from others, I don't know, I can't speak for other people. I'm comfortable with what happens. I'm at the point where I would absolutely love to see the Knicks get to the second round. Who amongst us wouldn't? But I'm also thinking about, this is a Cavs team that did the thing in terms of they pushed their chips to the front of the table and they got Donovan Mitchell. And the Knicks didn't. And I'm not saying that in oh my God, I can't believe the Knicks didn't get Donovan Mitchell type situation. I'm saying that for the Cavs, their whole thing is it's really not about the Knicks. It's not about Donovan Mitchell. It's about we have to validate our trade because we bet that Donovan Mitchell can be a great player and also that Evan Mobley can even surpass him. And for the Knicks, it's really much more would have been a nice have. Totally understand why the Cavs went for it and got what they did. It doesn't come down to the Donovan Mitchell trade. It doesn't validate it one way or the other. And I'm glad because I haven't seen a ton of that this past week of Donovan Mitchell and blah, blah, blah. It's great. It's the aftermath. Even if the Knicks win, I don't really want to hear anything about Donovan Mitchell. If the Knicks don't win the series, I also don't really want to hear anything about Donovan Mitchell. They are connected and they're completely separate at the same time. So with all that being said, I still feel really good about this series. Just in terms of, I'm happy to be here. I'm just happy to be here. It's about getting back to respectability, and the Knicks are a respectable franchise again. So that's where I'm at. Where are you?
Where I am with the very last thing you just said is I am at a place where I'm reminded of something a wise man once quoted from a show that had many wise lines. And it is, it's really a question and answer. What is happiness, Jeremy? It's the moment before
you need more happiness.
You need more happiness.
Yep.
I think I'm happy to be here as well. And I could say, for as much as I picked the Knicks, I don't know if we may need to get a rules official up here. Am I allowed to pick the Knicks in 7 and also not think the Knicks are actually going to win the series, or do those two things not? Is there no Venn diagram in which?
I mean, they're kind of diametrically opposed. You're saying the exact opposite of what the first thing was, right?
I am. So I guess I can't have my cake and eat it too here.
In this case, I don't believe you can.
I can't. Look, I want the Knicks to win. Do I believe that after however many games this series is going to be played, that the Knicks are going to be victorious? I don't believe that. Intellectually, I can wrap my mind around it. I could see a scenario where the Knicks win the series. I can do the mental math and the matchups and how this can arrive at a Knicks victory. And I could talk myself into the pick that I've made, which is Knicks in 7. in my heart of hearts, I am not expecting them to win this series. So that probably makes no sense, which is fine.
No,
I'll live with it.
I actually get where you're coming from.
Do you? Okay.
Well, it's the head and the heart, right?
Yeah, it's the head and the heart.
So yes, they're in conflict, but you still, even though you believe that Knicks in 7 could be the case, you also recognize that the Cavs are favored to win, and they should be. They have been a better team this year.
Can I say one other thing?
Yes, you may.
I think now, yeah, this is how I justify it. It points to the absurdity of making picks before these series, because we have no idea what the hell's going to happen. And I know we're like content creators. We provide things like picks, and picks are part of the content we provide that gets then picked apart and dissected. I don't know what the hell's going to happen. You don't know what the hell's going to happen. No one knows what the hell's going to happen. I would love to believe that the Knicks are going to win the series in 7. I think, like you, this is going to be a closely matched series. I think also, like you, I think you just said it, or maybe you didn't say it. I'm just hearing things. The Cavs are the better team. Do you think the Cavs are the better team?
And I do believe that. Yes.
Okay. So we're on the same page about all of those things. And this is my extraordinarily long-winded way of getting around to the point, as I want to do, which is that I think I'm in the same place as you, which is that I am kind of happy to be here, with one caveat, in that there are, and this is true of the Cavs as well as the Knicks, and this gets into the bigger picture stuff that you were just talking about. I think where I differ from you, and this is a credit to you for having the capacity to not only zoom out, but trust that the zoom out is the accurate picture, as opposed to the pie in the sky. Because I think you're right. I think when you zoom out, there really isn't a whole lot of downside here for the Knicks. I don't have the ability to do that as well as you, so I'm more focused on the micro, which is how the narratives will play out if this goes a certain way, and it goes a certain way by the path of Donovan Mitchell going a certain way, and it is probably a very good way in terms of how he produces in the series. And I fear that. So from that perspective, there is a little bit of a more of an edge to where I'm at mentally going into the series, poppycock or not. But like, and just to put a fine point on what you were saying, and then I'm curious what your thoughts on this. If the Cavs had never traded for Donovan Mitchell, and they went into this, and let's in this magical world give them the version of Lauri Markkanen that like existed last year. So we can't foresee Lauri Markkanen turning into a borderline All-NBA player. Who would have been picked to finish with a better record this season, the Cavs or the Knicks, do you think? If
you're having this year's version of Lauri Markkanen on the Cavs?
if you gave me the Cavs with Colin Sexton, with Lauri Markkanen, but not having the, I don't know if it's hindsight or foresight, not knowing like that Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton were going to be better. And in all likelihood, I don't think Lauri Markkanen would have become this if he had stayed on the Cavs. My point is basically like they didn't make the Donovan Mitchell trade. We're sitting here and it's October 5th. Who do you think most pundits are picking to finish with a better record, the Knicks or the Cavs?
One more question.
Sure.
If the Cavs are not taking Mitchell, are the Knicks getting Mitchell?
No, they're not.
So it's just straight up. Yes. In this case, I would say it would be the Knicks, right? Because
by a lot or a little?
By a decent amount. I mean, like the conversation, of course, that you and Fred were having, where you talked about how the 2 of the 3 best players are in this series are Knicks. So if if the best player, that being Donovan Mitchell, is not on the team, then the Knicks have the 2 best players in the series. And to me, that says a lot, right? That is pretty significant.
Wait, hold on. Maybe I didn't. Are you acting with hindsight? I'm talking about back in October, before we knew we were getting this version of Julius Randle and this version of Jalen Brunson. That's the question.
Gotcha.
This was a very convoluted way of getting to a point that I'm trying to make.
So it's both the rosters.
Both the rosters.
From the perspective of October, when they did not have Donovan Mitchell and the Knicks were shaping up. Okay. I thought the Knicks were going to be 7-8 play-in type, and I thought the Cavs are going to be around that without Donovan Mitchell.
Okay.
So if there was this matchup, it'd probably be, maybe in the playoffs.
So flip a coin?
Around there. Sure.
Okay. That is the reason why your point needs to be a much more emphasized one going into the series. And it is not a more emphasized one, because the only thing that the Knicks did this season is exceeded expectations with what they already had. What the Cavs did between when we thought they were going to go into this year with the roster that did not have Donovan Mitchell on it, and now is they went out and they traded all that stuff for Donovan Mitchell. So I'm just trying to put a exclamation point on your point, which is that we should not be looking at this as any pressure on the Knicks whatsoever. But of course, we are. Yeah.
And the last thing that I want to do right now before the playoffs even begin is eulogize this season, right? Because the Knicks, I feel they have a very good chance here. It's more just taking a step back, and I think it helps us kind of appreciate the playoffs a little bit more if we do that, right? The way I see it is from my vantage point where I'm standing, it's just anything goes. If you make it to the second round, then you beat a team that traded a lot for Donovan Mitchell. And that's fine, because they will have other seasons in order to do that. It was not hinging upon beating the Knicks or this one series. And if you lose, you lost to a team that went for it, that is focusing more on the now than the Knicks are. And the beauty of that is the Knicks don't have to focus on the now. They've been making upgrades every single offseason, or rather I should say they have been trying to make upgrades every single offseason. Did not go exactly as planned last season. This past season, they got back to where they are. The way that I also see it is that first year, they won 41 games, lost 31, made it to the first round. We went in there thinking, at least the majority of us, I know Andrew, of course, picked the Hawks. Like the Knicks are going to be, it's going to be a really good series. Fourth seed, they have home court advantage. They've got better players, whatever it is, Julius Randle. It didn't go that way. Part of it is kind of reflecting on it. Like, I don't want to feel that way again, where I felt so confident, only to see it go that way. So it's tempering my expectations. But there's also the portion of me that says this team is so different than the one that we saw 2 years ago. Whereas that felt like a flash in the pan type situation. This feels like the beginning of something that's consistent.
Yes.
And when you consider that for a lot of these players, they need years under their belt, they need experience. Like, it would be great to see them move on. I want to see it. Of course I want to see it. We all want to see it. All who are Knicks fans, all of us listening to this want to see it. I'm just cool with the option of just don't embarrass yourself. Just play a respectable, hard-fought series, and don't go out sad exactly like last time. I don't want to ever feel like Game 5, where the Hawks just shot the lights out and made the Knicks feel so far away than they actually were. It's almost like this isn't the best example, right? But I'm a Giants fan. The Giants had a great win against the Vikings in the playoffs. First time back in the playoffs in ages. A little different, obviously. The Knicks made the playoffs a couple years ago, but other than that, it had been a long time. Giants beat the Vikings. Really exciting. Next to playing the Eagles. And you just know it's not going to be a great game, but you're still in it. You're still in it. Still focus on it. And then the Eagles destroyed the Giants to show, yes, you won, but you're pretty far away. But there's something, there's a nucleus there. There's something to build on. And that's exactly what I want. Whereas the last time it was just, damn, this sucks. This is embarrassing. Whereas if this is a hard fought series, this goes to 7, whatever it is, like whatever it might be, it's okay. Keep going. Keep moving upwards. Great.
I think you absolutely nailed it. That's the how, not the what. Mm-hmm. The what could go a few different ways and it be okay. The how is far more important. And the other thing, which is, again, I feel, and maybe this is just me arriving at a place where, again, I don't have all the confidence in the world going into this series, because, and it's not because I don't think a lot of the Knicks, it's because I think so highly of the Cavs.
Bingo.
And they are, I always get my odds mixed up. Let me make sure I get this correct. Yeah, they're minus 215. So essentially the Cavs are 2-1 favorites to win the series. That was not the case 2 years ago against the Hawks. The Knicks and the Hawks were, maybe Andrew remembers exactly what it was. I want to say it was more or less even money. Is that your recollection too, Jeremy?
It was definitely closer than that.
Yeah. It was way closer. I think the Knicks may have been favored. I'm not 100% sure.
I think they were slight favorites.
That sounds right. I think, and a lot of people picked them. I mean, there were a few people who picked the Hawks, but most people picked the Knicks. So like, there's that, and then, like you say, the foundation. I think, and then you turn around, and you're like, okay, well, what's the how that could be really troubling? And my mind, I don't know about you, my mind immediately jumps to Julius Randle. If Julius Randle has the sort of series that he had 2 years ago, because I just don't foresee a world where like a Jalen Brunson or an Emmanuel Quickley has the sort of series that would raise like massive concerns about either of those players, or like a Quentin Grimes for that matter. Like your core pieces that you want to either are your best assets, or I think core pieces moving forward, or even like a Mitchell Robinson. Julius is the one, and Julius is hurt. So like now that complicates things, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Let's see how he looks, and before we start diagnosing what went wrong, let's hope he looks good and he plays well. I think that would be lovely. But the Cavs are, I mean, they're really good. I've said it a few times and I'll say it again. I think there's a real possibility that the Knicks are facing in this playoff series, with the caveat that Phoenix is a different team than their record shows. So like the fifth best team in the league, is it crazy that the Cavs might be the fifth best team in basketball and the Knicks might be, let's say, the sixth best team or fifth, sixth in some order? Like, I don't think that's nuts.
Nor do I. And I agree. It has nothing to do with the Knicks. It has a lot to do with the fact that the Cavs in the regular season, of course, that's all we can base on. But this season, they have been a dominant team. They have been phenomenal. So, but that's the beauty of it. Basketball's not played on paper. It's played on a court. So we'll see. There are ample opportunities. What are some of the like, if I had to ask you right now, the thing that is worrying you the most about, it could be completely general, it could be from a macro perspective, or it could be zooming in. Where are you at right now? I know you and Benji talked about it a little bit, but I'll where you're at.
I'll go to Julius. I'm worried the most about Julius, and I'm worried the most about Julius if only because what we saw leading up to the injury was they were there for me at least. There were shades of the player that gave us all a fair bit of, or me at least, I won't speak for you. I think he gave you a few headaches, maybe not as many as me, because I was doing the post games. So yeah, there were shades of that player, and it was frankly scary to see that guy come back. Now, maybe it was just the mental fatigue of the season, and maybe this injury will actually wind up being the best thing that could have happened to him. But if that would be the thing, because like if Jalen Brunson does his job, which I suspect Jalen Brunson will do his job and make the right play and make some tough shots and do all the things that we've seen Jalen Brunson all year, if that's Jalen Brunson in this series, then Julius Randle is going to have an opportunity to look like an all-star. And I phrase it that way very particularly because, like, yes, he'll still have to make tough shots, but the tough shots will not be the sort of tough shots with all the pressure on him like it was 2 years ago, where all the attention was focused on him. Now, I think the attention is going to be focused very much on Jalen Brunson. So it's going to be like, all right, Julius, you're going to have I don't want to say an easy opportunity. It's not going to be easy, but an easier path to success. So if in the face of that slightly easier path, he was not able to come up big, I think there would be some very difficult questions that would get asked. That's why that's my biggest concern heading into the series. Other than that, I honestly can't say I have that many concerns. To me, it's just let's roll the ball out there and see what happens, and let the chips fall where they may. What about you?
It's absolutely fair to have him be up there. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. And this might have actually been mentioned in a previous pod that you did. I'm worried about the turnover situation.
Okay.
I think the possession battle is going to be absolutely key here. And, it's interesting because the fact that the Knicks, according to Cleaning the Glass, turnover wise, I mean, they protected the ball really well, right? 5th in the league. Meanwhile, Cleveland was 11th. So that's great. Yep. It's the defensive side. And a lot of my concerns kind of stem from Cleveland's defense in that the Cavs were number 3 in forcing turnovers and the Knicks were 25th. And I've just been thinking a lot about my biggest worry is that the turnover situation exposes the lack of defense on the wing to a greater extent than we have seen, right? Like we can talk about, and I feel for RJ because his name is getting dragged through the mud, but also I can't say that it's not warranted, right? Like I can't.
In what specific way? Yeah.
Just in the sense of this is someone who has really been going through it, just struggling. We can cite all of the numbers and just how he's not closing games as nearly as much with Josh Hart here. And yet there are reasons why we're talking about it. It's not just us going out of our way to do it. It's this in a series where a team will look to exploit what they perceive as a weakness. They're going to do it. They're going to hunt for mismatches as much as they can. And I just worry that this exposes how the Knicks lack someone who is a bigger, stronger, better defender at
I want to get back to that.
And the reason why I'm thinking about this is because a lot of folks might point to last year's team where you had Jalen Brunson, especially the games that Luka missed, talking about, I'm not really worried about the Jazz in the sense of, like it's fine. I'm sorry. I'm not worried about the Cavs because of how Jalen Brunson broke down the Jazz.
Yeah.
That was a big thought. And look, it's hard to find above all be all stats or all in one. I'm just looking at EPM, specifically defensive, the defensive plus minus here, right? Of DPM. And if you look at the Cavs for their rotation pieces, right? They've got Dean Wade, Jared Allen, Isaac Okoro, Karis LeVert, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland. That's 6 players who are all in the 80th percentile or better on the defensive end. And then you cut to the Jazz of last year, right? Okay. And it was basically Gobert and it was Conley. That's it. No one else who could get to that level defensively. And then when you look at what happened last year as well, I mean, the Jazz were one of the worst teams in the NBA in terms of creating turnovers. Their turnover percentage on the defensive end was terrible. Yeah. And they actually did worse defensively in terms of creating turnovers against the Mavs than they did throughout the regular season. Granted, 6 games, small sample size, obviously. But when you see Jalen Brunson post, like a 41-point game with no turnovers, on one hand, it's great because Jalen Brunson's on the Knicks, and the Knicks could really use a player like that. And that is certainly their benefit. That's what the glass half full would be. The glass half empty would be, okay, but this is a better defensive team than what Jalen Brunson faced last year. There wasn't much of a perimeter point of attack defense compared to what the Jazz might have now. At least
the Cavs have now, you mean?
The Cavs. I keep because of Donovan Mitchell. But yes, and that's where I get a little bit concerned is when the half court offense, which the Knicks have been better at this year, at least since the December 4th, that's improved. But when they get flustered, it gets a little dicey. The quick decision making is a little bit tricky. And I'm worried, especially with some of the actions that we saw. Like, I thought the Pacers were really one of the first teams a few months ago that exposed the Knicks' inability to act as quickly and as methodically as possible. Yep. And I just worry, especially if Julius is not playing or not 100%, that the decision making is going to get frantic, and that's going to cause more turnovers. And then more turnovers are going to lead to more points and more possessions. So that's my number one issue when zooming out.
It puts so much pressure on Jalen Brunson to talk about steering the ship. Like, he can't have a moment where both hands aren't on the wheel and securely fastened. And that's whether Julius is in there or not. And then there's kind of the oxymoron, right? Because you just said, well, if Julius isn't out there, Well, suddenly it's Jalen Brunson and a bunch of guys who are suddenly thrust into a situation that they have not been in, with all due respect to everything that Emmanuel Quickly has done this year in some massive games, with all due respect to the playoff experience Quickly and RJ got, and Obi, if you want to throw him in there, 2 years ago, with all respect to the fact that RJ Barrett carried the Knicks as an offensive piece a season ago, with all due respect to all of that. And that's why it's funny, like you talk about RJ's name getting dragged through the mud. He's the guy who I'd have the most faith in keeping a steady head and a steady hand if, again, like Julius is not in there and they needed someone else to just calmly be like, okay, it's all right. I know what we have to do here. I got this. Because that's the thing about RJ. For as much as I and other people will kill him about flatly not making enough shots and occasionally making some poor decisions, that's different than getting flustered. And I don't think RJ Barrett gets flustered. And that's why he remains my X factor for the series. Just like a couple other things. And one, if anybody is like, well, it's fancy advanced stats are nonsense. We know Darius Garland is a good defender and Karis LeVert's not a good defender and Mitchell's not a good, like, whatever. The fact that all those players that you listed from Cleveland have those EPMs, it doesn't
DPMs.
matter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, DPMs. Whether it doesn't matter whether there's an indication of whether they are individually strong defenders or not. It is an indication that this year they grade out as good defenders because they are doing something right and sustainable on the defensive end that is really hard to rattle. And I think that is going to translate because at the base of it, you have not only a very good rim protector in Jarrett Allen, but someone in Mobley who is essentially the queen on the chessboard on that end of the court. So when you put those things together, I think that there's a pretty high floor there defensively. And this relates to your other point, and this is another fear of mine. You want to take a guess as to how many games this season the Knicks out of 82 shot 30% or below from 3-point range in a game?
There were a lot of them early in the season. A lot. Oh my God. I'm going to go with 25.
You're off by one. They shot 30% or below 24 times, which is almost a third of the season. Now, you are correct. There are some from early in the season. I'm counting just from October and November. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 from before December 4th. Or sorry, yeah. So pre-Cavs game, and it's funny, their worst shooting game of the season from 3 is the Cavs game on December 4th, the game that turned their season around. Neither team could hit the far side of a barn in that game, but it
was that also
because
the most travels. Sorry to cut you off.
The most travels.
Yeah,
The game was a disaster.
I was in there. It was awful. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, it's so only 14, if you want to say it's in the relevant portion of their season. So, the last 59 games, because they were 10 and 13. So 14 out of 59. That's not that bad. The playoffs are also a different animal, and like I am of the belief that if the Knicks are going to win the series, they're going to have to shoot it. And they're going to have to shoot it whenever they're open. And that doesn't just mean Quentin Grimes. That means if it's Brunson, if it's Randall, if it's Obi, and then the one wild card is kind of RJ, because like if he's wide open, does he put it on the floor? Does he shoot it? But like quickly, like all these guys, they're going to have to shoot it. I fully believe that. And this is a team that, is just not a great shooting team. They haven't been a great shooting team all year. So that's a concern for sure. And like and then it leads me back to what you said. If the shots aren't falling, do they have that kind of mettle to stay like mentally engaged? I think they'll stay mentally engaged defensively, even if the shots aren't falling on offense. But like, and then that gets back to what the Cavs could do on offense, and they're a dangerous team. So like, there's a lot of things here where it's just like you could look at different segments of the series and be like, man, if this doesn't go right, if that doesn't go right, if that doesn't go right. And then you look at it from a Cavs perspective, it's like, what could really go wrong for let's maybe that's how we should kind of end this. What do you think could go wrong for the Cavs in this series? Because I'll just be honest, like there's nothing glaring to me. I guess you could say like the Knicks' physical nature will kind of not intimidate them. I don't think that's going to be the case, but like, you know, they'll get into foul trouble. They won't be, as you said at the top, they won't crash the boards. Like they'll kind of start to cower a little bit and like get beaten down over the course of a series. I don't know if I have something better than that.
I would probably go with the Knicks hitting threes.
Okay.
Because, well, I mean, it isn't in the sense of how if you are the Cavs, I mean, in terms of your 3-point percentage, right? Like Fred wrote a great article in terms of how the Knicks want to get to the rim. Cavs want players to get to the rim.
Yep.
But then from a 3-point standpoint, I mean, they're 25th in terms of defensive 3-point accuracy. So
and worse from the corners. Their 3-point shooters, I think, are the second most accurate in the league against Cleveland.
Right. So the game plan it then would seem to be, okay, well, drive and kick and then find the open man. The corners, of course, in this case, what the Knicks love to do, that would be ideal. And that's why for me, I see a lot of discourse specifically on Twitter about when it comes to someone like RJ, who like the Pelicans game, incredible from 2, 0 for 9 from 3. And then an emphasis on, well, RJ just should focus more on shooting 2s. He shouldn't be shooting as many 3s. And I saw it a lot. And I just sat there on my phone or my computer. I mean, like, what? No, that's the antithesis of the Knicks game plan. The Knicks want players to shoot 3s. They want them to keep doing it. And if RJ stops doing that, it collapses a lot. And
it's the chicken or the egg, isn't it?
Right. I would rather RJ Barrett shoot an open 3 than to drive because I should rephrase. He is so good at driving. I want him to drive, but I also want him to kick out a little bit more. But that's been something that's kind of been RJ's thing all career, really. At least most of his career. Point being, I don't want them to change up the game plan to such a degree where it throws everything off. Because that's also why you have Josh Hart there. It's why you have Emmanuel Quickley. It's why you have Quentin Grimes. You can find ways to work around it if you find that someone's struggling. If someone doesn't have a hot shooting night, there's someone else who can. It's just next man up mentality. That's it. But don't radically change everything that you've been doing because then it kind of falls in on itself. And I'd really rather not see that. I just stick to the game plan. It's what got you here. Make adjustments where necessary. Don't do anything radical.
If you're, I've seen the same thing and it frustrates me too, because there are, correct me if I'm wrong, there are 2 perimeter players. And I don't even know if I would consider Draymond Green a perimeter player, but for all intents and purposes, he is, because he operates on the perimeter a lot. There are 2 perimeter players in the league, Draymond and Jimmy Butler, who have made a significant impact on the game. I'm not talking about centers, obviously, and like bigs who live down low, who could make a significant imprint on a game where everybody in the arena knows that they're not going to shoot a 3. And even as I say that, Jimmy Butler he hit a lot of 3s this year, for him at least. So like, I don't even know if but I'll throw his name in there as well. It's just like, it has to be a part of your game, because if a team that you're playing knows that you're not going to shoot a 3, I just think they become so much easier to guard when he's out there, when RJ is out there. And I understand the whole thing about you give him the runway. I am not as confident that will turn out well for the Knicks. Now, what I will say, and this is maybe like at the end of the day, it's like, what does a playoff series often comes down to? It often comes down to your best players hitting tough shots. If Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle can make life difficult enough and painful enough, and you could throw Emmanuel Quickley in there too, and you could even throw Quentin Grimes in there too, with his ability to penetrate a defense with quick decision making and get it to whether it's a Mitch or a Hardenstein or whoever is cutting, any of those guys. If they can really make life difficult enough that they could keep pulling those help defenders in to the paint and kick out and make, and like you say, make those threes. That's how the Knicks win the series. I don't think the formula is that complicated. It's just like, can they do it? And we'll find out starting today as you're listening to this.
Yeah. And if you said your X factor is RJ?
Yeah, he is.
He's mine too. And I've got something, this will come up in the offseason we'll have a lot of stats for different players in the offseason, but I was playing around with cleaning the glass and this really stood out to me. If you have RJ Barrett on the floor and you have Fournier, Sims, and Rose sitting, there have been
Fournier, Sims, and Rose sitting. Okay.
Right. So, listen, you can play with numbers in a way. It's tricky because if you sort out all of the negative players, it's going to reduce positive. But these are players who are also outside of the rotation, which just goes to show I tried to find the players who really weren't there. If you do that, and you have RJ on the floor, the Knicks are in the 71st percentile, a difference of plus 2.9. That's good. That is
very good.
That is good. You want RJ in there. That's a positive.
Can I guess the off-court number?
So yes, if you take those three players and you have RJ off the court, there have been 1,781 possessions. So keep in mind that is half, but still a significant sample size.
It's a lot of possessions.
Yes. Would you like to guess what percentile and what difference it is?
I'm not going to guess the percentile. I'm going to guess that they are plus. Is it between 8 and 10?
No.
It's not between 8 and 10.
It's not.
Oh my God, it's not higher than 10. It's not higher than 10. Is it higher than 10?
Yeah.
What's the number?
It's plus 16.
Is that right?
Plus 16. 99th percentile. It's the 99th percentile in points per possession on offense and is the 84th percentile on points per possession on defense.
And there's a lot of Josh Hartman. We should note there's a lot of Josh Hartman in there. And this team was flying high when they got Josh Hart.
So I'm not saying that this is stable, right? I'm not saying this is going to be across the board. And I'm not saying that the RJ numbers that he had were bad. It's more of a context thing, because even with everything about RJ Barrett, I want it to be known that there are still some positive minutes that we have seen there. A lot of times he's being weighed down by players who are now out of the rotation.
Yep.
But then when you look at the other players, are they also to a degree being weighed down by RJ based on how we've seen it? So I'm with you. He is also my X factor. It's going to be a really fascinating series. Obviously hope things go well for all parties involved. But he's got to kick it to another gear for the Knicks to be able to make the next round. Well, and if he's not able to, it's got to be on. And again, this goes for every player on the roster. If they don't have it and they have not proven that they have it that night or in general, because let's be honest, Brunson and Randall are going to get the benefit of the doubt, which makes sense. Then we're going to, we could talk about other players, how if they don't have it, let's get someone else in there. But unfortunately, this season, RJ has been the most glaring of all of that. So he takes the shots. And that's just the way it simply has to be. We can still talk about other players, but he is the number one thing that your eye goes to. So let's hope for a good series from him and from everyone.
I hope for the same. I don't want to get ahead of myself. This is a big series for him, and I completely agree with you. It's not, and this is where I think the conversation devolves into certainly toxicity, but just like it's not fruitful. This year and this year and this playoffs, it's not a referendum on RJ Barrett in any way, shape, or form. RJ Barrett is 22 years old. RJ Barrett has already shown for a 3.5 month stretch that he can be a 24-point scorer in the NBA. I understand those circumstances were perhaps unique, that the season had kind of already started to tilt on its axis and eventually capsize. I get all of that. If you are someone that could average 24 a game for 3.5 months and do it on not, even if it's not the best efficiency, but you could do it with a straight face in terms of how often you are putting the ball in the basket. And he did enough for me, to the point that I was sat on here and praised him after many a game last season.
Mm-hmm.
If you could do that, you're a player. Might take a little bit of work to figure out the fit and like the home and all that stuff. You're a player. RJ Barrett's a player. He's going to be a player. He's going to help teams win basketball games a lot in his NBA career.
Mm-hmm.
But the portion of his existence on the Knicks in which it's like, okay, we will have the patience. We will have the patience. We will have the patience. If it wasn't over already, I believe it will end this summer. That is, you may not share. I don't want to get into the whole thing. I know you. We don't need to.
We got a whole summer to talk about.
We have a whole summer to talk about. We don't need to get into it now.
14 players on the roster. Yes.
But again, that's where the conversation is at now, which is like, if this team is ready to win to a greater degree, and they are looking to perhaps shift gears in some way, shape, or form in terms of what they do this summer to make that happen. That is why this is a very important series for RJ Barrett, in my opinion. That's just me.
Yeah. Again, trying to stay in the moment. I just want to say, for all of the players who are going to see action, I don't feel that I've had this thought for a while, and Zach Lowe confirmed it when you and Ian were talking, where it's such a small sample size that it can't take away from the 82 we've seen before. The moments are different. The lights are brighter. It all matters. But I just think back as well to like the NCAA tournament, where there are players whose stock shoots up because they had a great tournament and they've been really poor the rest of the year, or just okay. And there's so much attention on a national stage. Like, well, look at what this guy did when it mattered most. Like, that's important. Of course, we have to look at the entire body of work. So
absolutely, 100%.
I know you're not disagreeing with that.
1,000%.
I totally hear you. It's more me just having a PSA of whether things go well or poorly for pretty much everyone. It shouldn't have an impact on whether a player should be here short term, long term, no term, whatever it is. It's 4 to 7 games against one opponent, and it's a chess match every single time.
And just to put a finer point on it, this is a big series for RJ Barrett. Those are the words that came out of Zach Lowe's mouth in his preview of this series with David Thorpe that came out yesterday. That's number one. And number two, I'm approaching this from a perspective of, we have 82 games worth of evidence that perhaps RJ is not the best fit for this core. I think this is a series that can shift that narrative back in the positive direction. I think we're at a certain point right now, and it's not that this series is going to be the series that gets RJ Barrett out of town. I am a personal of the opinion that like he may be on that path anyway, and maybe what he does in this series, and God willing, more than this series, the series and the Knicks continue playing, can give some of the decision makers in New York a pause and have a second thought and be like, well, hold up, wait a minute. Let's not get hasty here and just get this guy out of town for the purpose of getting him out of town. I want to be just very specific about where I'm coming from.
Understood. And when the series is over, we will have ample time to rehash it. And hopefully we'll be able to talk about the next series that features the Knicks against the winner of the Bucks and whoever will be the 8th seed, which people listening to this will know by that point.
Yes. What's your pick? Dude, you have to give a pick, don't you?
I do. You're saying in terms of the series.
Knicks, Cavs. What is your pick?
My head says the Cavs, and my heart says 7 games. I want to... There's a part of me that feels like they can do it in 6. It's funny because a lot of these series, at least it feels that way, and maybe I'm wrong, so please correct me if I'm wrong, John. A lot of the series where in the opening weekend, the away team steals a game.
Yeah.
But then it shifts back and it kind of gets neutralized in some way. I want to say this is 2-2 after 4. After that, I get very curious about where it goes. I think the bottom line is a lot of the games are going to be close. So my prediction will be that at least 4 of them are extremely close. I'm talking about like within 5, 7 points, 7 points, right? That's usually Well, clutch.
Yeah, I mean, among the I had this stat in the newsletter today. Among the teams that are currently in the playoff field, and as we are speaking, the Heat are not, and the Wolves are not. But both of those teams have exceeded what I'm about to say. The Cavs and the Knicks are tied with the Sixers for the most games in which there was a clutch situation. So last 5 minutes, score within 5 points at 45 a pop. The Sixers are pretty good in those situations. The Cavs and the Knicks are both about 500 teams. Yeah,
which is funny because at least 3, if not 4, because I'm blanking on the 4th game, there were no clutch minutes, really, right? Because there
were definitely clutch minutes in the third
third game's the one I'm blanking on. So that probably
the third game that was clutch because that was the Hartenstein block
right
at the very end. Yeah,
Blockenstein. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Blockenstein. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that quite tells the story. You're right. By the way,
I 100%.
Game 1, even though the Cavs were shooting lights out of the ball, that was, I believe, a tie game, either very early in the fourth quarter, or very late in the third. The second game obviously was a nail biter, even though the final margin of victory I think was like 9 points. And then the last game, the Knicks made their push towards the end, and ended up winning by 16 points or 14 points, 14 points. Mm-hmm. Which is one of the Cavs' largest margins of victory of the season because they do not get blown out. Okay, we've talked about this enough. You made your pick. I made my pick. I just want to see good basketball. I want to see a good series. I want to see a hard-fought series. If we get to Game 5 and it's 2-2, at that point, I'm very comfortably going to be like, whatever happens, it's fine. Yeah, I'm cool with it. Last thoughts, Jeremy, before we get out of here?
Just a good, hard-fought series. And, if you're listening to this today and you're able to make it out there to come to the watch party at Penn 6, then please do. It's at 132 West 31st Street. Should be a lot of fun. Starts around 5 o'clock. I am actually expecting it to be pretty packed, to be quite honest. So
I think it's going to be a good crowd.
We're going to have people upstairs. I would imagine there's going to be plenty of spillover downstairs too. So come out, hang out with me, I guess, because John will be.
Yeah, I have duties.
Andrew also has duties with John. So, let's make the most of it. Let's have fun. It'll be a great series. And we got great content. So we're set.
What about my duties with John?
No, you heard me. I said that on purpose.
Thank you. John completely missed it, which is why I wanted to acknowledge it. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. You're gonna have a blast tomorrow. I'm sure everybody will have a blast. God, I hope they win that game. I think game 1 is gonna be important. So we keep our fingers crossed. And what's that?
Keep them Robert crossed.
Keep your fingers Robert crossed.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the other way is getting it 53 wins if they win this series. So yeah,
it's true.
All right. For Andrew Claudio, Jeremy Cohen, I am Jonathan Macri. Thank you for checking out another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We will, of course, have post game for you live after the Cavs game. Excited for that. And then Jeremy and I will be back to put a little extra color on whatever happens in Game 1. That pod will be dropping our usual time, Sunday into Monday at midnight, and then not a ton of turnaround time till Game 2 on Tuesday. So all that's coming up. Till then, catch you soon. Peace out.